We looked at these books from about New Mexico and related. We looked at these. Let's continue along. Took some out. Okay, and right away we have a miscategorized book, really. Geomorphology of Desert Dunes. Awesome. I'm so happy I own this. That's crazy. That's a book that exists. I have a book on waves, too. It's in the science section, which is probably where this should be. But it could just be in general nonfiction. Yeah, environmental science, geography, earth science. Okay. So I'm going to move that one. But, wow. This was a recent thrift store purchase where I was like, cannot resist. Discrete signature. Intrigued. Interesting spot. This looks very sciencey. I wonder if this is not for the lay person. Cursed be my status as a lay person. That looks readable. There's maps and charts and stuff. It is fascinating. I love dunes. I love watching sand. So if you're trying to have a farm, it means death. Okay, little book friend, you're going to go over and live with the book about waves and the book about clouds. New best friend. Other friend. This book about the atmosphere kind of, shows the wind to be a single, and all clouds to be a single mass. New home for that book. This could go in general nonfiction or science. But really probably properly belongs in the New Mexico section, I think. Pretty relevant. It's all about Los Alamos, New Mexico. A little bit of Albuquerque. Then you go down to Socorro for the Trinity test. Winner of the Pulitzer Prize, National Book Award, and the National Books Critics Circle Award. Okay, Richard Rhodes. Wow. I was going to say I haven't read this, but then I remembered I took a class called the Atomic Bomb in Literature. Literature of the Atomic Bomb, taught by the great Gerald Wisner, who is a famous indigenous writer who wrote the Constitution for, what tribe was he from? I want to see White Earth. He's actually like a really interesting experimental writer that's written a number of like hybrid works for UNM Press and others. Really interesting figure, that guy. But this was a textbook in that class, and I did read it. And it's incredible. And we read so many books on the atomic bomb in that class. And it was kind of an interestingly formatted class where it kind of seems to be pointing toward one conclusion, and then he kind of gave a twist at the end with a sort of ethical verdict on it all. It was interesting. I didn't always agree with him, but why are you galloping around? Yesterday you got catnip, but today you got the zoomies. Gizmo, control your child. I'll never forget going to the Atomic Museum. Now you're running in here. Cats get freaked out sometimes. Oh, they're having fun. The sisters are finally accepting each other and playing together. They're so imaginative. I mean, look, her tail is fluffing up. Her tails fluff up when they play. They get so involved. I'm like, that's really kind of brave. Not brave. What's the word I'm looking for? If I sound sniffly, I think I'm getting sick for the first time in like 2 years. And that sucks. It limits my options in life. Plus, I just got this job filling in for someone that's out of office kind of unexpectedly. I'm there for like a month and I don't want to miss any of it. I'm back at my old high school. It's crazy. And I actually think it would be good for the school if the person who I'm filling in for comes back. They're like the most pro school spirit person around there, or one of them. Like someone that cares about the place, you know. Hey, squirrel. I just picked this one up last summer from a free box out in the middle of nowhere in Utah, I think, or Arizona. No, that's not true. I bought it from a gear store that had a book section in Escalante, Utah. What's up, kitties? We had this big van that all the hikers were in. It was me, 2 other staffers, and 13 teenage trekkers. So much fun. And that was a great job, and I hope to do that again next year. It's kind of sad I missed out this year, but I'm going to arrange my life so I can do it again. But our van broke down and we were stuck in the little town of Escalante, Utah, where I had a long history and like had tried to buy a house during my first marriage a long time ago. It's a super historic spot and connected to Everett Ruiz's story and so many stories. But there was a gear shop that had a coffee shop in it and a little used bookstore with almost full-priced books. And I bought this there with a few others. We were just walking around visiting everything there was to visit in this little town. A thrift store that had some great stuff there. I got some good James Joyce there. Got this copy of A Skeleton Key to Finnegan's Wake. Yeah. Which I already had, but this is a nice paperback. And I got this copy of Finnegan's Wake, which I already had, but this is a nicer copy than the one I had, which I got rid of. Now I have two. Oh, that's a reader's guide. Do you like thrift stores for their book selection, Prisma? Okay, so this obviously isn't just about New Mexico and could just as easily go in the Southwest section, maybe more accurately. Totally. There's not going to be a New Mexico section by the time I get through this section. Like here's one that I got this because of what it says about the CCC in New Mexico. So that to me makes it a New Mexico book. The CCC were such an interesting, great organization. It should never have been disbanded. That's an excellent, we wouldn't have the crisis of homelessness that we have now if we brought back the CCC. The Civilian Conservation Corps was like basically a guaranteed job service for people. And if you couldn't work for the CCC, maybe you could find something with the WPA or the REA or a number of these different groups. I mean, the WPA would have people going out and like recording oral histories of folklore of little communities or painting murals or whatever your skill was, teaching a class on tie making or pottery making or something. And the CCC was incredible, and it's amazing when you know about them just how much of the infrastructure that we still use today and enjoy is still around. In Albuquerque, we have the Wantabo and La Cueva campgrounds up in the Sandias, and everyone loves those, and they've got these stone houses. We've got the Kiwanis Cabin on Sandia Peak, and we've got all these different campgrounds and things in the Sandias, and any of them that have stonework came from Camp, I want to say what was that one? I think it's Camp F8N, and it was a tent camp. Anyone could join the CCC. You had to have 3 working teeth, my friend Stephen Usherman found in his research. If you had 3 functional teeth, then you could eat the food they had, then you could do the work, and you'd earn money. And they did. They went all over. And so there were a few of these tent cities from the CCC around Albuquerque, a guaranteed jobs program. We would not have the crisis of homelessness that we have now if we had this sort of thing. We would have a higher quality of life and a happier, more able country, you know? Nietzsche said, what is good? All that makes you feel powerful. What is bad? All that takes that feeling away. Not like, you know, power and the pursuit of power is the ultimate justice of everything, but we know the kind of power he's talking about. It's autonomy, you know, the feeling that you are yourself. And that's pretty hard to do when you're destitute and you have no reason to live and you're not invested in society. Like, I don't know. It's easy to meditate on homelessness a lot in Albuquerque because it's very apparent, as it is in a lot of Western cities and cities in general right now. To think about defensive architecture as a response to it, and to think about, like, if you ever see like a homeless person littering, that's kind of interesting. I'm like, what does that say? You know, I think it shows that they just feel completely cut off from their surroundings, completely uninvested. Like, the goal of building up society is not theirs anymore. They're just operating from despair, I think. Whatever. Rambling, sorry. But Camp F8N at the Sandias, when I was writing about them, the survivors of Camp F8N used to meet at this Furs Buffet here in Albuquerque near, where was that one? Near Wyoming and, I want to say Manal. They would tell stories, and I got to interview a lot of them and get quotes from them, and hang out with them. Really, I went like more than 1 week to this place and hung out with them. I think it was a Furs. Part of me thinks it was a Stuckey's. No, it's definitely Shoney's. Got a file somewhere. They told me a story about one time they had sandwiches that a bear got to and ate before they could have lunch, and when they got there, it was just like all destroyed. This food cart that was full of like roast beef sandwiches. The CCC, awesome program, super interesting. You know, a big reason so much of America has electricity is because of the efforts of, you know, a similar group, the REA, that did electrification across this country. I have an REA map in my book, Towns of the Sandia Mountains. Here's another Nuke book by, who wrote this one? Oh, it's edited. Introduction by Richard Rhodes. So introduction by this guy. The birth of the atomic bomb in the words of its creators, eyewitnesses, and historian. Hey, this is kind of like a historical anthology. I love that sort of thing. I've got some anthology projects in my mind for some distant day. And my chapters are collage-like in my book. And I do find it beautiful how all the prismatic elements of our lives make up a story in their granular way, you know, like all the books in this apartment. That's the story of modern life, you know, of the life of the mind of humans of this time. In English, anyway. So it's always just a sliver of experience, but even so rich, you know. Okay, this one should stay in the New Mexico section because this would be all Los Alamos. I'm very interested in Los Alamos. It's just an hour from here. People go there all the time. Live in New Mexico long enough, you'll have many connections and stories related to it. They built the doomsday machine. They built the off button on humanity. What up, kitty? All right. Sleeper in the window. You really do extend a paw for peace, Prismo. People don't give you credit enough. You, squirrel, you flop before the altar of existence and say, "What do you have, existence? Send it to me, I am open. My limbs are uncrossed. Let all that is flow through me. A furry Whitman-esque hero for the ages. Conduit." Prismo, will you ever stop reaching? No. That's what you do. You reach for the stars, you reach for your dreams, you reach for love, you reach for hope. You're amazing, kitty, you inspire us all. Paradoxically, we have another example. A more nihilistic one, perhaps. One that says, sleep through it all, ignore it. None of it matters. Enjoy yourself. In this too, there is truth. In this too, there is wisdom. Oh, hey, look at this. Another one about the Southwest. New Mexico and Arizona. Back in the territory days, they were one. They were one big territory. Very different places. I honestly think New Mexico is too big. It's the 5th largest state in America. And it's like, I don't know. Someday it'll have a higher population probably and fragment 100 years from now or something. But it's like, this is crazy huge swath of land. You can buy maps that are called New Mexico and Northern New Mexico maps. Like, what's going on there? Beautiful shiprock. I prefer the Navajo name, which means rock with wings. Because it does have wings. They always cut that part out of the photo. It's got these swells on either side. This is a volcanic neck. It's the center part of a volcano, the lava part that remained when the rest eroded away over time. One of the classic, beautiful natural features of the world, I believe. My breath gets taken away by shiprock still when I see it. Nothing in this image gives you a sense of its scale, really. Or how it looks with the weather around it, you know, living. It's good to have this sort of thing. I think this one might have been my sister Leanne's. This was in a box of inherited things. Had some good, like, nice guidebooks from her. She would always do this thing where she'd set out cardboard boxes in an empty room of this beautiful old Shaker house that she and her husband Phil lived in Kentucky. And the boxes would have people's names on that were her friends or family that she was thinking of. And she would just casually fill them up over like the course of a year or however much. And once in a while, you'd just get this like amazing package from her. Oh, I was thinking of you and I got these books. Or she'd save them for birthdays or whatever. But like there was always so much thought and she'd always write like thoughtful things in the front. R.I.P. to a real one. And anyway, it was really sad, but also beautiful and amazing that after she died, her husband Phil went through all those boxes and taped them up and sent them with notes to everybody. The last ones that she hadn't sent. This might have been in there. It was very moving. If I have enough for a small like things on cassette section. I know I've got Odyssey and Iliad commentary, maybe a couple more things. But here is a 2-tape tour. I like this idea. Oh no, it's just one. I like this idea of doing like a narrative tour of an area. We've done some podcast episodes that are kind of like that for City on the Edge, my podcast about Albuquerque, co-hosted with Ty Bannerman and Nora Hickey. But the Turquoise Trail is this touristy nickname given to the road between, I mean, there is a historic precedent of it, but because there were turquoise mines out in Cerrillos, see that dot where Young Guns 2 was filmed? one of the places. Maybe Young Guns 1. Madrid, where The Man Who Fell to Earth was filmed. And Wild Hogs, but let's not talk about that. The Ortiz Mountains, where the first gold rush west of the Mississippi happened. I was just looking at their beautiful silhouette yesterday. Went up to Sandia Park last night for a school-related event. Let's see. Oh, the San Pedro mines. Wait, is that where? Yeah, that's where the San Pedro gold mine is there. I wrote an article about this concert that happened underground there in the 1940s. The New Mexico Symphony or whatever. Then had a woman as the conductor, and they were the first major one in the world to have that. And they played a concert underground in this mine, and it was like amazing. And they all rode ore carts in and wore headlamps. Sounds great. I went to a party there and got to really check it out and meet everybody. But they had said that they were having rock falls, and so no one could go in the mine. I could see it. Golden, I read their whole newspaper. The Sandia Mountains, San Antonito, Cedar Crest, that's where I grew up. So the Turquoise Trail is cool. This is kind of just I remember learning a ton about this that I didn't know, and I don't think it did historic deep dives. It kind of checks the history boxes, but it's still like a unique thing. And you don't see this around much, so I better hold on to it. The Turquoise Trail in Rio Grande Valley, a Roadrunner audio tape. I'd like to do something like this. I really love that documentary from the director of Capote called The Cruise, where it's just this like really erudite and knowledgeable about New York City guy who is just narrating the poetry and the history and the personal elements of everywhere that they see on this trip. And it's this really eclectic, wide-ranging, human, sometimes moving account of a place that really forges deep connection while you're going on about it. I love that. And I've always wanted to do something like that for the towns of the Sandias and maybe La Madera Road, this dirt road that crosses the north end of the Sandias. My son is named after two ghost towns along it, and I have a big history there. That's where I found that inscription that I talk about in another video. Listen to the fascinating story of New Mexico's land and culture as you drive between Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Pretty cool. 1987. I don't even have a tape player right now, nor do I have a CD player or any way to play CD-ROMs. Got all this media here I can't do anything with, but I'll hold on to it. Heck, I have a box of 3.5-inch floppy disks full of writing. Kitties, of course, have information encoded in their DNA in case of emergency. That was just something foreign agents paid me to do for a little while. And they can withdraw them with like a simple blood test later. Let's see, we're at 17 minutes. Let's look at like 2 or 3 more things, and we'll make it like a 20-minute video. Those seem to do well as any, aka not that well. But 20 people see something that you say, that's interesting. This is a book I've read most of. Great cruelties have been reported. 1544 Investigation of the Coronado Expedition by Richard Flint. I was trying to encourage my fellow co-hosts on the podcast and myself to just read more New Mexico history things so that we could do more than just talk about what we already know. However, so I was reading this, and it's very interesting. The first documented Europeans in the Middle Rio Grande Valley where I live, where Albuquerque is now, which before that contact was the Valley of Tigüe, where the Tiwa people lived and others, Ancestral Puebloans. If you're not from this area, that's like a really big distinction, because you had nomadic indigenous groups like the Apache and the Navajo that moved around and so on, and the Comanche. And then you had the Pueblo people who were really doing the living in one place thing, and had agriculture and irrigation and houses and defensible homes, defendable. But when Coronado came here in 1540, he and his soldiers pretty much they were a ruthless bunch at times. And they did have a chronicler with them, and I should get that book. Castaneda, we'll look at that next time. Squirrel, I feel like you're not taking the channel seriously. Like you just flop right next to me. What is it? What are you telling me? But their treatment of the indigenous people were so bad that it led to a huge trial. And did the trial basically amount to a slap on the wrist of the guy? I think so, more or less. But it was still like a big thing that generated a lot of court documents, and shows that even in the 1540s, people cared about, not just being murderous and horrible. But yeah, about 200, there was what was called the Battle of Tigua here in Albuquerque, which really should have a movie. It's more of a massacre. The indigenous people, the Pueblo people were upset here because the soldiers were seizing homes and blankets and supplies, things that people needed to survive the winter. And a soldier raped a woman, and then, of course, the people responded to that. It was a whole lot. It culminated in this huge massacre, and then Coronado wandered to Kansas, and they turned around. But it wasn't like a huge splash of an expedition that made a big difference. In fact, when the Chamuscata Rodriguez expedition came through in 1581, supposedly they didn't even know about the Coronado expedition. That's disputed a little bit, and there's some evidence that maybe some of the members knew something. There were also slaving expeditions and salt expeditions and small things like that. But today the mall is named after this guy. But back then, his men, like Alvarado, who our longtime train station here in Albuquerque was named after, were sicking dogs on people and garroting people. Really fascinating story. And if you live in New Mexico, you got to read it. Sometimes it's charged here. There's, I don't know. A lot of people really have the Lynyrd Skynyrd mentality of we all did what we could do. And I do think you've got to bring, the lenses of the past to the past and think about it. There's many unjust systems and institutions and things that our governments do, et cetera, that exist today. And how much of it can we all protest and change, Well, anyway, yeah. So the ground since this time, if you want to excavate this, and there have been excavations done of Coronado era artifacts here in Albuquerque, and you can see some of them at the Albuquerque Museum. It's very cool. But it's 12 feet down. That's how much sediment has been piling up since that time. Get those other books next time. I think I'll keep this one in the New Mexico section, just because I know that I have it for this one chapter. This one, though, I'm putting into the Southwest section. Easy. These will return to their old home by the window, where they've spent so many an eve. Listen to the rain. They've felt the warmth of the sun, where they've smelt the smells of a bustling kitchen. Probably also of the nearby litter box room. Fun to edit the sections and watch them kind of get cleaned up. That's where the bonsai tree element comes into it all. All right, folks, time to write or something. What do sick people do? I'm gonna do that.